Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. It wasn't the silence that hurt. It was the sound of the knife scraping the ceramic plate. Back and forth. Back and forth. Jennifer hadn't looked up once during dinner. Just kept slicing her grilled chicken like it had personally offended her. Everyone else was laughing, talking, raising glasses. Our table was packed. Friends we hadn't seen in months. There were candles, cheap wine in expensive glasses, and a Bluetooth speaker tucked behind a potted plant humming indie rock like it was trying to keep the peace. And then, out of nowhere, she stood up. No warning. No speech. Just stood, walked around the table and reached for his hand. Coulter. The one guy I didn't recognize. He had this smug, slow-smiling face like he already knew what she was about to do. People quieted down, thinking maybe she was tipsy. Maybe it was a dare. But Jennifer wasn't drunk. She was sharp, cold, focused. She squeezed his hand, turned to me and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "Relax, darling. It's just one night." That was it. No explanation. No follow-up. Just that smirk. The kind that tells you she's been planning this for weeks. The room didn't erupt. It folded in on itself. Some friends stared at their drinks. Others tried to laugh like they were in on some kind of edgy inside joke. I sat there, still holding the plate she had pushed away 20 minutes earlier, trying to figure out if this was really happening, or if my brain had just snapped. But the worst part? She didn't even look back. The front door creaked open at 6:42 a.m. I know because I hadn't slept. I sat on the couch all night, half wrapped in a throw blanket that still smelled like her perfume. My phone lay on the coffee table, screen untouched. Not a single message or missed call. Not even a lie. Jennifer stepped in barefoot, holding her heels like they were trophies. Her eyeliner was smudged, her blouse was buttoned wrong, and her hair, God, her hair, was still damp with sweat or rain or something I didn't want to think about. She didn't look shocked to see me awake. She didn't flinch. Instead, she dropped her keys in the bowl by the door and said in the same flat tone she used when reminding me to take out the trash, "You're up early." I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the coffee mug I hadn't touched. But all I managed was a whisper. "Did you mean it? Last night?" She blinked like she couldn't remember what I was talking about. Then her lips curved into a smirk. The same one from the party. "It was just one night, Percy. Don't be dramatic." She said it like she'd stayed out late with coworkers. Like she hadn't publicly shattered our marriage with one sentence and a stranger's hand. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I asked her who he was, how long it had been going on, if our friends knew, if I had been the last to find out. She shrugged, and said, "Coulter gets me, that's all." It wasn't supposed to come out like that, but maybe it needed to. My voice cracked when I asked her if she even felt bad. She paused at the fridge, pulled out an orange juice and said, "Why would I feel bad for wanting to be happy?" Then she turned and walked upstairs. That morning, I realized something brutal. She had already moved on. Emotionally, mentally. She had been gone for months. I was just now seeing the echo. And I didn't know whether to cry or beg or disappear. The thing about silence is that it lies. It tells you everything might be okay if you just wait long enough. But that morning, the silence between Jennifer and me wasn't peace. It was distance. A chasm. She went upstairs, took a shower, got dressed like nothing happened. I heard the blow dryer humming over the pounding in my chest. She left her phone on the kitchen counter. Unlocked. No password. I stared at it for a full 10 minutes. My hands were shaking. I don't know what I expected, maybe a few texts, maybe something to confirm my worst thoughts. But what I found, it wasn't just betrayal. It was a strategy. There was a group chat called Moonlight Project. That should have been my first red flag. No one names their group chat that unless they're plotting or filming something they shouldn't be. Inside were Jennifer, Coulter, and two women I barely knew. One of whom had clapped a little too loud at the party the night before. They were talking about me, not just mocking me, planning around me. There were screenshots of my texts. Coulter had labeled one Percy's meltdown, LMAO. They were laughing at how predictable I was. Jennifer had even sent a voice note saying, He'll sulk and sniffle but won't do anything. He's spineless. She was right. I didn't do anything. I sat there reading every message like it was homework for a life I never signed up for. One chat from 2 weeks ago crushed me more than the rest. It said, "Jennifer, I'll test the waters at Friendsgiving. If he doesn't blow up, we move forward." Coulter, you're sure? Jennifer, he's not built for confrontation. He's built for compliance. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just stood there, still holding her phone, the screen glowing like a confession booth. I felt like I had walked into my own trial and discovered the verdict had already been decided. Guilty of being forgettable. When she came back downstairs and saw me with her phone, she didn't panic. She just looked me over and said, "Well, now you know." No apology, no remorse, just confirmation. Like this was her version of closure. I put the phone down gently. My voice barely worked. "So that night, it wasn't a mistake?" She tilted her head. "It was a rehearsal. I left the house without a plan. No keys, no wallet, just my phone and the jacket I always meant to replace. My feet carried me 2 blocks before I even realized I was walking. Every step felt like retreat, like I was quietly vanishing from a life that no longer had space for me. I ended up at a little coffee shop near Lakefield Avenue, the kind of place that charges extra for oat milk and writes quotes on the tip jar. I sat at a corner table, staring out the foggy window, wondering how many people lived lives like mine and just never said a word. I didn't even order anything. I just sat there, scrolling through her messages again, like the hurt needed to be re-injected every 5 minutes to stay real. Then a message popped up from Grady. Grady was the one friend I thought was neutral. We'd worked together years ago and had stayed in touch, though never close. He'd been at the Friendsgiving party. He hadn't laughed. He hadn't clapped. He had just watched. And now he was texting me, saying, "Can we talk? In person." I met him half an hour later in the park behind the elementary school. It was cold, the kind of sharp cold that wakes you up without asking permission. Grady looked uncomfortable, hands stuffed in his hoodie pocket, shifting from foot to foot. "I didn't know how to tell you," he started. "But that wasn't the first time." "What wasn't?" He sighed. "The party, the hand-holding, the stunt. They've been floating this open marriage narrative for weeks. Said you were on board, that it was your idea." I nearly choked. "My idea?" Grady nodded. "She's been showing up to things with Coulter, telling people you're emotionally unavailable, that you agreed to try something new." I felt the ground tip. Reality blurred. I hadn't just been betrayed. I'd been rebranded. She was rewriting our story in real time, casting herself as the victim and me as the cold, distant husband who drove her into someone else's arms. "You didn't think to ask me?" I said quietly. I wanted to, but everyone just believed her. Of course they did. She was confident, smiling, loud. I was forgettable, hesitant, quiet, the perfect villain in her curated tragedy. As I walked home, Grady's words kept circling. They believed her, because I never spoke up, because I never fought, because I was exactly what she called me, compliant. The front door was unlocked when I got home, which felt strange, even though it was technically still my house. Jennifer was in the kitchen, calmly slicing strawberries like we were in the middle of a slow Sunday morning. She didn't look surprised to see me. She didn't ask where I'd gone. She just pointed her knife toward the counter and said, "I left some papers for you." I didn't respond. I walked past her and saw a neat manila envelope resting on the granite. My name scribbled in blue ink across the front. Inside were 2 things, a drafted separation agreement and a brochure for some boutique mediation firm in the city. I hadn't even opened my mouth yet, and she'd already moved to finalize the end of us. Like this was just another appointment on her calendar. I looked up at her, searching for any flicker of guilt, any crack in the mask. "Nothing," she said. "It's cleaner this way, less mess. You don't want to fight, do you?" And in that moment, I realized something sickening. She thought I'd thank her, that I'd quietly sign and shuffle out of her narrative like a side character who'd overstayed his welcome. She had already framed the story in her head. She was the brave woman chasing happiness, and I was the shadow she outgrew. But something had shifted in me. I didn't yell. I didn't flip the counter or smash a plate. I just looked her dead in the eyes and said, "You're not the only one who's been quiet. That ends now." She froze. I took the envelope and walked upstairs. And for the first time in weeks, maybe months, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel confused. I felt clear. I pulled out my laptop and started gathering everything. Emails, calendar invites, financial records, the texts from her phone, which I had quietly airdropped to mine, the screenshots, the voice messages. I created folders, organized timestamps, built a narrative of my own, one she didn't control. It wasn't about revenge. Not yet. It was about reclaiming the space she'd convinced me I didn't deserve to take up. And as I looked over one particular message, her telling Coulter, "He'll never push back." I trained him out of it. I felt something in me snap, not with rage but with purpose. She filed first. But that didn't mean she was the one walking away. The next few days were quiet. Unnaturally so. Jennifer barely spoke, and I didn't push. We moved like polite strangers sharing square footage. She probably assumed I was caving, emotionally folding the way she predicted I would. But she had no idea what I was doing in the background. I didn't go to work. I called out using PTO. But what I really meant was preparing to detonate a life I didn't ask to be part of. Every hour she spent thinking I was sulking, I was building. I contacted our shared financial advisor, and he hesitated at first, until I mentioned certain transfers Jennifer had made under both our names. The kind she never discussed with me. I reached out to one of the women in the Moonlight Project group chat. I didn't accuse. I didn't beg. I just asked if she'd ever seen me act like the man Jennifer described. Cold, controlling, emotionally manipulative. Her silence was more honest than anything Jennifer had ever said. Then she whispered. She said you were okay with the open thing. That it was mutual. It wasn't. And something in her voice cracked. I'm sorry. I believed her. We all did. By that night, I had assembled what felt like a timeline. It was more than evidence. It was a confession she didn't know she had written. Screenshots, voicemails, financial trails. I had even printed out the email where she referred to me as a temporary situation, while coordinating her next apartment lease behind my back. And then I made a choice. I hosted a dinner. Just 6 people. Close friends, the ones who had witnessed the moment at Friendsgiving and had said nothing. I told them I wanted to clear the air. Jennifer agreed, even helped prep food. She wore a new dress, poured wine like nothing had ever gone wrong. She was relaxed. Too relaxed. Once everyone was seated, I stood up. No theatrics. No anger. I know you've heard a version of our story, I said, holding up a small flash drive. But I want you to hear mine. I plugged it into the TV. Screens lit up. Her voice filled the room. Laughter turned into silence. Eyes widened. Wine glasses paused midair. Jennifer didn't speak. She just stared, mouth slightly open, one hand gripping her chair. I didn't say a word, because for once, I didn't have to. When the last audio clip ended, no one said a word. The room was so still I could hear the ice melting in someone's glass. On the screen, Jennifer's smiling photo sat frozen in a thumbnail, the same one she used for her group chats, where she laughed about my emotional fragility, like it was a running joke. I didn't look at her right away. I watched the faces of our friends instead. Camden, who had once told me Jennifer was just fiery. Bexley, who had been all too quick to share her Instagram posts but never once reached out to me directly. They weren't angry. They looked ashamed, like accomplices who'd only just realized they were in a crime scene. Jennifer broke first. She stood up suddenly, the legs of her chair scraping hard against the tile. "You're sick," she hissed. "Recording me? Snooping? This is abuse, Percy." The irony hit so hard I nearly laughed. I stayed calm. "I didn't record you. You sent these yourself. You just never thought I'd read them." She started pacing, wild-eyed, cheeks flushed. "You don't get to do this to me. You don't get to humiliate me like this." One of our friends, Miles, who'd stayed unusually quiet through everything, finally spoke. Jen, you humiliated him. Publicly. You held another guy's hand at a dinner we hosted. Jennifer spun on him like a storm. It was a moment. A message. He never listened to me. Because you never talked. I cut in. You broadcasted. You staged performances. You gave speeches about your needs to everyone but me. I would have listened. I was always listening. But you'd already decided I was the villain in your story. She went quiet again. It wasn't guilt, it was fear. Not of me, but of being cornered by a truth she hadn't authored. For the first time, she realized she wasn't in control of the room. Dinner's over, she said, grabbing her bag. You can all stay and wallow with St. Percy if you want. She slammed the door on her way out. But no one followed. They stayed. Not because they wanted to pick sides, but because they finally saw the whole picture. Unfiltered, unedited, and not dressed in Jennifer's curated charm. I stood there, breathless, not triumphant, just emptied out. But for once, I wasn't invisible. It's strange how the smallest things change when the truth is finally out. The morning after the dinner, I opened the blinds without flinching. I brewed coffee without pacing the kitchen. I even answered a call from my mother, something I'd been avoiding for weeks, too ashamed to explain what was happening. Jennifer never came back. Not with an apology, not with a tantrum, just silence. The same silence she once used as a weapon now folded back in on her. Over the next few days, friends started reaching out, not out of pity, but acknowledgement. One text from Miles stood out. I should have said something earlier. You deserved better, man. For the first time in years, I started believing that was true. I didn't take the low road. I didn't post about her online. I didn't trash her publicly. I let the facts speak louder than my pain. And somehow, that silence, the real kind, not the kind she weaponized, became a peace I hadn't felt in a long time. The lease was in both our names, but she ended up terminating it. She sent an email, cold and efficient. No subject line, no goodbye. Just, I've made other arrangements. Keep the place. I don't want anything from you. And strangely, that was the kindest thing she ever did. I spent a weekend repainting the walls. I changed the layout of the living room. I bought myself new bedsheets. Small things, stupid things. But every change was a declaration. You're still here. You're allowed to exist fully. People always talk about revenge, about destroying the person who hurt you. But sometimes the real victory is not becoming who they said you were. I was never spineless. I was never weak. I was just quiet in a storm too loud to speak over. Now I speak clearly. To anyone who's ever been dismissed, rewritten, or sidelined in their own story, let this be proof that you don't need a dramatic finale to walk away strong. You just need truth and the patience to let it land. And to Jennifer, wherever she is now, I genuinely hope she finds whatever she was searching for. Because I finally did. What moment in this story hit you the hardest? Was it the phone discovery, the party, or the dinner reveal? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every one. You're watching Reddit Confessions, where stories find their voice. If this hit home, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more.